Hello and welcome to Clamp, the Creating, Living, and Making podcast. I'm your host, the Grant Alexander, and joining us this week is the Adam Mackey,
What? Hi.
the Morley Kurt,
Hello.
and the Yves from Projects and Things.
Hello, everybody.
So, Yves, or should we call you Yves? Is it Yves?
Yeah, some people do, and then I kind of stop responding.
All right, so I'll try not to do that too much. Yves, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Grant. I'm a little bit like you guys. I'm a maker, and I kind of have been since I was a little kid. And I now have a YouTube channel. And if I could, I would spend all my time making things and showing the world what I make and then how to make stuff, because I think it's fantastic. I'm 30. I'm going to be 35, somewhere like that. That seems scary old sometimes, but and I live in Belgium. I have 2 kids, and I'm super passionate about making stuff. That's it.
Nice. So Belgium's in Germany, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We're the capital of Germany. The best thing I heard a couple of weeks ago was someone talking about how Belgium is the capital of Brussels, and I was like, "You're so close. You're so close." I was super amazed at people that know the country and know the capital, but flip.
Yeah.
Well, Brussels seems bigger than Belgium, I will say. I hear more about Brussels in my day-to-day life than I hear about Belgium.
Legitimately, it's a very, very tiny country. There's like 10 million people in it, and Brussels is like the hub of Europe. So it's a very weird dichotomy between there's a lot happening here, and there's the European Parliament, and there's tons of important things being decided in a country the size of like a pinprick.
Well, it's funny. It's kind of like Washington, D.C. in the States. When D.C. was created, it was this random swamp in the middle, at that point, in the middle of the U.S. And it's now grown into like this like metropolis, but it's just this kind of random place. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, Yves, what's in your clamps this week?
In my clamps this week is I did something that's going to enrage most of the internet, or at least the trolls. I bought a 177-year-old Swedish bed, like a nice wooden handcrafted. I think it was a kid's bed. It was one of those beds that you can sort of slide apart to make wider, not longer, but just like put 2 people in it or take it down. And I cut it up into a ton of pieces. And so I'm not redoing it. I'm not restoring it. I'm literally chopping it up into pieces. And it's going to be the face frame of... Do you guys know what a cupboard bed is? Like in a lot of these old Swedish houses, it's like a bed. You can have curtains that you can close. And it's like your entire bed area is enclosed in a cabinet. So I really wanted to make that for my son.
Interesting.
So he's now almost 5. He got like a big boy bed, and I was like, "Oh, this could be cool with like a platform up top and a lot of things around it." And then my wife found this old bed, and I go like, "Oh, I know what that can be. That can be the nice frame." Because here's my thoughts around it. I don't like the fact that from a bed, most of the time you can only see 1 or maybe 2 sides, because the rest is against the wall or hidden somewhere. So I was like, how can I show all 4 sides of this beautiful thing? And the answer was, take a Japanese pull saw to it, cut it up. And so I've started that process. The bed's ripped apart, and now I'm building up the rest of the construction. And later, all sides are going to be sort of opened up the way you would open up a cardboard box. Like you flip it open, and then it's going to be... I'm doing things with my hands that none of the listeners can see, but essentially I'm going to flip the side of the bed up.
Well, they'll have to watch the YouTube video for this part.
They have to watch that. That they can do too. And so that's going to be a long-term project of, I think, maybe 3 or 4 weeks before all of that's finished. And in between, I've been also testing out making cutting boards, which has been a learning experience. That's me.
Cool.
Fun. The cutting boards are always a good video, seemingly on YouTube. I've seen them launch a lot of people's YouTube careers. So, good luck with that.
My
Mine
thank
didn't
you.
take off.
You have to make a really nice one to get it. I saw a guy.
Oh,
he
wow.
just made a walnut cutting board, just an edge grain walnut cutting board. 1.2 million views. He was at 1,000 subscribers when he put it out,
Wow.
Wow.
and now he's at like 30,000.
The right cutting board at the right time.
Right?
Damn. Okay, I'm gonna
Well,
put
what
some
about you?
extra effort into video then.
Yeah. It's all about the thumbnail. It's all about the thumbnail.
Yeah.
Morley, what have you been up to? What's in your clamps?
So I finished up and put out the video for the bed drawers. And if it is all about the thumbnails, I feel like I got a pretty sweet thumbnail for this one. Yeah, I was very happy with the video. It got a good amount of traction on Reddit, which is always fun. Get some new eyeballs on the channel. And yeah, so that was
Good old
a
Reddit.
yeah, that was a fun one to finish up because I've literally been working on it for like months. It was one of those projects that I started like way before the move and then had to like put it off for a while. So there's anyone who hasn't seen my videos before who's watching it. I feel like it still makes sense, like where things are happening, but I'm curious if it's clear to them that it is in two like completely different apartments, most of the building. Yeah.
I don't think most people noticed.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. Anyway, I was really happy with the video. The cardboard project that I mentioned last week is progressing along nicely. I still don't want to say exactly what it is because it's one of those projects where like, I don't want anyone's input. I just want to only show it when it is completely done so that I don't have any other opinions sort of like informing my process.
Can I give you some input on that?
Sure.
No, I'm just joking. I've got no input to give. I just thought it'd be funny.
Yeah, so it's at a point now where it is usable, but I want to make it bigger so it works better. And the original sort of impetus for this was we had all of these boxes from moving. We had like tons and tons of boxes, so I wanted to use those up. And I have long since used those up, so I'm now getting boxes from Eden's work because when they get food deliveries, they just get like tons of cardboard boxes that they just recycle. So it's like the best box source in the world. So I'll probably pick up some more tomorrow. And I think that'll be like the last trip I need to finish it off. And yeah, if depending on when I get it done, I might get the video done by the time this episode comes out. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's a really fun project.
You left your cardboard castle in the background.
I know. Well, those are just the remnants, so it doesn't reveal anything.
What about you,
definitely
Adam?
cardboard
What's in your
castle.
clamps?
This week I've just been working on the drawers for my new workbench. But I've run out of material, so pretty much done with that for now. But I cut I don't really know what the parts of a drawer are called, but I've cut like the sides of each drawer and the back and front. And then I just need to, I was going to use plywood to make the base, but I think I'm going to use MDF because I really don't want to spend $100 on a sheet of plywood just for drawer bottoms. Which, I mean, I'm only going to be putting tools in there. It's not too big of a concern. And if I use MDF and it fails, it's not that expensive to replace it.
Well, MDF is strong. I mean, like, it's, considering, depending on how thick you're using, like, it should be good.
Yeah, it's going to be 3/4 of an inch.
Oh, yeah, that'll be plenty strong.
Yeah. And it's also going to be, instead of like screwed to the bottom of the drawer, it's going to be inset in the bottom of the drawer and then screwed in. So the weight will be on like the edge of the screw, not pulling out. And then just drawer fronts, do the top, install the table saw, and pretty much done.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's very
So
cool.
what's in my clamps, you ask? Oh.
No, I didn't.
Well, this week I've been working on putting trim in my closet. It's like the last bit of trim that I need to put in, and I've finally figured out, or I've finally done the little hack where you when you want trim to match up, you don't just cut it on 45s because it'll never match up nicely. You use like a scroll saw or jigsaw or a coping saw to cut the pattern out. And what I've always done in the past is put a flat bit on top and drawn the pattern and then just cut it. But what I learned is that if you cut it on a 45 degree like bevel, like from my new dual bevel miter saw, can tilt the head over sideways 45 degrees, and you cut it off, you can then just follow the line that's left over from that cut. And you get a perfect, like that. If you follow the line perfectly, it works. It's the same if you would cut it like 45 degrees, cross cut it on the table saw. But when you're dealing with longer pieces of trim, it's kind of annoying to try and slide that on the table saw. But that trick just made things so much easier. So I've been doing that and then focusing on making my coping saw skills better. So I had to redo some of them because I was not very good at coping.
Is that the like original use case for a coping saw for cutting trim?
I don't
Is
know.
that what coping is?
I've heard that term, so maybe. Yeah, that might make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, a coped rat. So it's a type of joint, a coped joint.
Yeah.
It's versus a miter joint. And I think it's basically like the joint you were just talking about. That is a coped joint.
Well, then that makes sense why I was using my coping saw.
Yeah.
I don't know what a coping saw is.
No, me neither. Is that the one that's in
like
the box where it's like on a 45 and it stays in the sliding in the box? No.
No.
Here, actually, I have one right here. If you give
this.
me 1 moment.
Yes.
This is a coping saw.
Oh yeah. Okay, got it. Now I know what you mean.
So for the listeners, it's like
A handheld scroll saw.
exactly. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Or it looks a lot like a jeweler's saw or a fret saw.
I don't know why I always thought that they were to do with metalwork and not woodwork.
Probably.
Well, the
'cause you
jeweler's
see-
saws are,
Yeah.
and they look identical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I've been working on is I was doing some forced perspective photography. It's I took the little toy car that I made for my son and I tried to make it look like it was the same size as the real thing by putting it really close to the camera and the car really far away from the camera. And that was an interesting thing because it's really snowy out right now, and to try and get things that were that I was just basically lying down in the snow for like 30 minutes.
Fun.
So that was fun. But I think
the snow makes it look better.
Yeah, the snow definitely helped the transition between like the foreground and the background, made it seem like it was like you can't tell where it stops and where it begins. But it also meant that I was laying in the snow and trying
It
to
was
get
really good, Bob.
Yes. And I'm hoping that I will get a fun, like, opening sequence or closing sequence that I haven't decided yet, where I actually, like, put down the car in front, and they're the same size. So I did, like, a little video where it's like my hand comes and grabs the car, and it's, like, the same size as the real car. We'll see. We'll see
Cool.
if it turned out the way it looks in my mind. But in thinking about that, the first thing that my son did when he got this car is that he wanted something to put on the roof rack. So we took a trip to the local hardwood store, which is the garage, and I got him some scrap wood, and we strapped some to the top. We put some in the trunk, and it's one of those things that I really like the fact that my son wants to get into making things and woodworking, and he pretends to make things, and he pretends like the coffee table, he says that's the table saw, and then he'll take wood and just like push it through irrespective of where the blade goes. He's not very afraid of this imaginary blade. But I thought it'd be a good thing for us to chat about is just, getting youth into making. And since we have Yves here, who's got some kids, and he's recently put out a video where he had a youth on his building with him. I thought it'd be a good thing to ask him about.
Yes, correctly. I had some juvenile delinquency helping me to make a skateboard. That was actually super fun because I so far I've been doing a lot of things with my son, and he's almost 5, so you really have to keep him away from spinning blades and stuff like that. But doing this thing with a 12 or 13-year-old was very interesting because the mom in this case was a little bit afraid of like, yeah, what can he do? What can he not do? Because the kid in this case was not familiar with tools, but he's learning how to skateboard, and he really wanted to have a skateboard rack to hold 3 skateboards. And I was like, okay, cool, I can make it for you, or we can make it together. And instantly he was like, bing, oh yeah, of course, let's do that. So I think the only thing that I took away or did myself was cutting a big sheet of plywood down to a few strips on the table saw, but then almost every other act, or what do you call it, every other like part of the build was done by him. So that was very interesting. The main thing that I take away from it is, I don't know if you guys listened to the Fools with Tools podcast a few weeks ago where Laura Kampf was on, because at a certain point she echoed my thoughts about this exactly. She was saying like, she's like, okay, you have to keep kids away from, like, you can't let a 5-year-old weld anything or put him like close to a table saw, but it doesn't have to be that kids will always be relegated to paper, cardboard, and craft glue. Like, they can learn about welding, they can learn about bigger tools, they can learn about all these things and still do some of them. And that's basically what I've been trying with my son. Like I've cut things on a bandsaw with him where I hold his hands and we're like slowly pushing things through the saw for him to get a feel for it. And he's working with hot glue and he's working with like sharp knives. I give him like a sharp knife and I go like, watch out, dude, you can cut yourself. And then he's trying to cut things, and every once in a while he will nick his finger, but hey, Grant, sorry, go ahead.
No, don't worry. When one thing that reminds me of is when I was a kid and my dad would like sit me on his knee and let me drive the car.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, obviously not on a road or anything like that, but if you're in a field or something or a parking lot, you get to drive the car for a little bit. And it's like, obviously I can't drive the car. I couldn't reach the pedals or anything like that, but I could hold onto the steering wheel on my dad's lap and pretend. And I always think it's funny that exactly, it's not like I got regulated to just playing with a toy car, right? You can try these bigger, more fun things like that with the proper supervision.
Because the cool thing about it is it's not even pretending. Like the moment you were standing on your father's lap driving the car, you were actually driving the car. Okay, there was the part missing of you braking and gas and all that stuff, but you were physically making a move and then feeling the consequences of that move. And that's what I think is when you see like the cogs in his head turn when he pushes something against the saw, or he takes like a battery powered drill and he's drilling a hole in something, you see him go like, oh wow, this thing pulls away from me. If he would hold it very gingerly, like it would actually smack him in the face. So slowly you see these things like process in his brain of like, oh, things have consequences, and that's, I find, very, very interesting. Because as long as
Grant, I was just going to say, my dad would let me do the same thing when I was a kid. I would sit on his lap and he'd let me steer. Or even when I got a little older, like young teen, was really itching to drive, but like it wasn't old yet, he would let me, like, he would take his hands off the wheel. I would reach over and drive us home.
Wow.
Which is always
a
lot of fun.
That does sound like
Sounds
fun.
safe.
I mean, but he's always right there, right? I mean, it's kind of like when you're letting, no, but it's interesting because it relates to the like letting your kids make. It's like, to me, it felt like I had all this power, but to him, it's like he could always just reach over, grab the wheel. I even remember like with my uncle once, he was driving me and my cousin home, and he was like, "Okay, I'm only going to drive where you guys tell me to drive, because I want to see if you know how to get home." So we, at every intersection, we would have to tell him, go left, go right, go straight. And he's like, are you sure? Or like, I think so. And like, we eventually kind of found our way home.
That's cool. My son could probably do that. I have a memory driving along a main road. I even remember the road and everything. And my dad just took his hands off the wheel, bent down, and started tying his shoe. And I'm just like, what the hell? And then I grabbed the steering wheel, and I'm like, Dad, there's a roundabout coming up. What are you doing? And he goes, don't worry, you've got this. Just kept tying his shoe. I'm like, what the hell?
That's another approach.
Trial by fire.
Yeah.
Well, but I think that kind of brings us to something that I wanted to bring up here, which is you got to pick things that make sense with your kids' abilities, but you should never underestimate their abilities. And why I bring that up is because I often think, like, how do I get Fletcher involved more with what I'm doing and making out in the garage? And I go, like, there's a lot of power tools that seem scary. Maybe he can sand something. But I was on the internet the other day in some Facebook group. There's this 2-year-old, and they look like a 2-year-old, like very, very young, with a hammer, and they were just hammering in nails after nail after nail.
Saw that.
Yeah, and I just go, well, why couldn't I teach my son how to do that? Right? Yeah. I didn't do it, but I kept thinking about it, going, I could just set him up with some nails that he pounds in. He already has like a plastic version of that. Why don't we make him something, actually make something out of it?
Here's actually, there's a great tip for you, is like tiny tools, like all the time. Whenever me and my son are somewhere in a hardware store, or me by myself, whenever I find a tiny version of an actual tool, not a plastic hammer, but if I find a tiny hammer or tiny pliers or a tiny knife, I just buy them. And that's his stuff. Like, he has miniature versions of all the things I have. And with the hammer, you can actually smack yourself in the finger, and you can cut yourself with the knife. And but he works alongside me, and it really works, because it's not like he used to have, and my daughter used it for a bit as well, like a kid's like workbench. So it was plastic hammers, plastic everything. Mm-hmm. And they did it for 5 seconds, and then they were like, yeah, no, this isn't a real hammer. Like, I can hit my sister with it, but it's not fun. And so those things really went away rather quick. Not that I want them to hit sister with a hammer, but you saw that they would do stuff and go like, yeah, but this is not like in the workshop. Like, this isn't real. And as soon as we went to a store somewhere, and the first thing I found was tiny pliers. And he's like, oh my God, those are pliers. I'm like, yeah. You want them? He's like, I do. And then he just went home, and he would just squeeze things, like take a piece of like electricity wire and just squeeze it and bend it. And he was kind of doing what Morley did a while ago, making like bent wire sculptures. And we started making dinosaurs. And I go like, this is amazing. And that's when that thing for me started turning, like, okay, tiny tools it's a way in, right? Because then you can do another thing. You can actually gauge how interested they are, because it's not necessarily, in this case, daddy's pushing something on them. I just go like, look, there's a bunch of tools. They're on your height. They're your size. What do you want to do? And I offer him like cardboard or something. He's like, no. Give me that piece of pine over there. And then he just starts, destroying things.
Give me that expensive hardwood you just bought.
I think, giving your kids tools is huge. And like, I was really into skateboarding as a young kid. And then before that, I was into just like taking stuff apart or whatever else. And so pretty early on, my dad got sick of me borrowing and losing his tools. So what he started doing is just like, if he had duplicates of something, one birthday he gave me a toolbox, and then he started giving me some of his old tools to fill that toolbox. And then all of a sudden I started caring about that, and I started sort of like going off and using things on my own. And actually, one experience that really sticks out in my head is I was building a model with my grandpa, and he had these green side cutters, like the side cutter pliers. And like he was doing a lot of the work, and I remember. Okay, Adam's back. That was weird. He was.
That was weird.
Yeah,
I've lost Grant, bud.
Okay, maybe he'll pop back. Anyways, if I keep talking, maybe everything will shake out by the time. Now I can't hear Grant. I don't know what's going on. But he was doing all these things with a tool. And then at the end of this day of building the model with me, he then gave me those pliers. And for me, I realized like I now know how powerful this tool is because I saw my grandpa use it to do like all these things. So very soon it became like my favorite tool. I was like, these are the best thing in the world because I saw my grandpa like do all these things with him. And it was a very linear, like A to B, like upped my interest in tools astronomically.
So one of the things I had as a kid is in my own wooden toolbox with some tools in it, like screwdrivers, pliers, a little hand plane that was dull, which is the unfortunate part. And I've tried sharpening it, and it just will not get sharp. It will not cut through wood. But it was like a little miniature hand plane. It was just still kind of cool. I still have it.
Is it plastic?
No, it's metal with a metal blade. It's a real hand plane. I just can't get it sharp for some reason. Can't get it to cut wood. Like it feels sharp, but it just won't cut the wood. Like it's just, and it's very difficult to adjust. It's like I don't know, a really, really, really cheap hand plane is what I think it is.
I think we all had that toolbox. Isn't it the wooden toolbox that kind of folds open?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had the same as a kid, yeah.
Yeah. And like the inside is like, mine was missing all the tools when I got it. And then my dad gave me some tools over time, and like they didn't really fit in the toolbox. Like the toolbox has been made for specific tools. Nothing I put in there fit, but I still have it, and I still have the tools that didn't fit into it. It's something that I want to like give to my kids, and I guess I never really realized that my dad gave me miniature tools. I never thought of it that way, but he totally did. I didn't really, I don't know. Gets me thinking and nostalgic a bit and wondering, what I can do for my son to get him more into making. He wants to make things. He comes up and like just makes things randomly that aren't actually like in his mind he's making something, but in reality he's not. And I guess it's one of those things. I know Adam was working on these that you had like a build with your kids. Thought process.
I need to make more episodes. So downstairs in my shop, I have currently 4 puzzles that are cut out, ready for him to cut up into actual puzzles. So it's just like dinosaurs cut into a shape, and then I'm going to get him on the scroll saw to actually go ham and cut whatever shape he wants. I think that's a really good project for kids because you don't need to follow lines. It's literally just cut whatever you want, and then it'll all just match up. But I don't know. It got away from me. Haven't really had the time. Haven't found time to do it with him. But hopefully I can try and get it done soon. But I love that idea of like giving a kid a toolbox of tools that they can just play with whatever they want, do whatever they want with it. Yeah,
and I think all kids are makers fundamentally. I think kids are kind of born makers. It's very natural for them, right? Like, I mean, as a kid, if I wanted a fort for my GI Joes, I would make it. It's just the thing to do. I think the more like modern maker movement, I think is more like a product of adulthood and the institutions of modern life that take us away from making. So I think for kids, it's mostly a matter of like giving them a way to act out that making instinct.
In saying that, I think that if you're going to try and get your kids into making and stuff, you really need to focus on safety because kids know no fear.
Yeah.
As Grant said, when his son uses the coffee table, he doesn't think about the blade. And of course, a 4-year-old is not going to be pushing wood through a table saw. But like when I get my son to use a scroll saw, I'm not just going to give him wood and say, here, go for it. I'm going to hold his hands and help him with it. And after a few times, he'll probably be good where we don't need to really worry. A scroll saw is not really going to cut you that well anyway. But yeah, so... I think safety is a very, very important thing.
I'm not sure if I told this story on the podcast before, but when I was like 8 or 9 years old, me and my cousin wanted to make walking sticks one summer day. So like we found like the perfect stick in the woods. And then he lived right next door to my grandparents. So we went over to my grandpa's house and we said, like, Grandpa, like, we want to like carve these down. So he gave us some chisels to carve down the walking stick. So we were in this backyard carving the walking sticks. Again, this is video content, but I'll try to describe it. I was holding the walking stick with one hand, holding the chisel with the other, scraping the bark off towards my hand. You can see where this is going. The chisel slipped and it went right into the center of the palm of my hand. I cupped my hands together and they filled with blood. That is like the most vivid memory I have from that. Had to go to the emergency room. They did use that glue where they like kind of glue stitch it together. And after that, I respected the chisel a lot more. But it wasn't a traumatic experience really. It was just like, oh no. And I would have to ask my parents how traumatic it was for them. But it's like it's just a flesh wound on your hand. It's like you're not losing any fingers. It's not a head injury, anything like that. But yeah, safety for sure. You're right. Kids know no fear when it comes. I wasn't scared. I was just like, oh, I guess I shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I remember in grade 6, we had a teacher who I think at one point just wanted to be a shop teacher, but in elementary schools across Canada, or across Ontario at least, they took all the shop classes away. And they basically, like this teacher now was just a grade 6 teacher instead of a grade 6, shop teacher. So he had in his classroom a shop set up, where he had like saws and wood and miter boxes and all that fun stuff. And he used to whittle away while he was at his desk. Like if he was sitting chatting with the student come up and ask a question or something, he'd be like whittling something. And I remember one day with a utility knife, he was whittling away and it slipped and he took a major chunk off his finger.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
Like a pretty... like down
Imagine
to the
explaining that to your boss.
Yeah.
Like, why the hell were you doing that?
Exactly. Well, anyways, I really enjoyed that class because it was one of those things where he would just, like, the tools were there and you had time to use them. And you got, obviously, instruction on how to use a saw a little bit and how to use a knife. And I just remember using a knife to carve out...
how not to use a knife.
Yeah. And we would carve out and make like pencil crossbows so we just like carve out the center of a board and use elastics to make a crossbow that would shoot pencils.
Yes.
And that was dangerous, but you did what you could.
And I think the fingers...
we're talking about the 60s here.
The stuff you guys were saying about the someone losing a finger or cutting themselves, I think that ties into teaching kids about safety, because there's two ways to do it. You can hurt yourself, or you can actually see someone else that actively gets hurt or has gotten hurt in the past. For me, there were two of those instances where, like, my grandfather was missing part of his pinky, and it was an accident in a factory years ago, way before I was born. But we were making stuff. We would make like kind of longbows, just like a stick with a string, and they would like whittle down sticks to make arrows, and then we would shoot them. And every couple of weeks, the arrows or the bows would break, and I would make new ones. And so that was kind of the working with my grandfather, was just like him whittling away at sticks. And as he was doing it, we kind of always get a good glimpse of his finger, and we're like, "What happened there?" And he would tell the story of like getting caught in a machine, and that sticks with you. And they go like, "Oh, that's dangerous." And then I noticed after so many years that my grandmother was missing her ring finger. And I go, "Grandma, you have 9 fingers."
Wow.
She's like, "Yep." I go, "I'm like 9. How the hell did I never see this before?" And so she told the story, and it wasn't even a making or sort of, what do you call it? Or like tool related incident. She was... they worked on a farm, and she was like putting up hay on top of those big carts behind tractors. I don't know what you call those. And they were up on top pulling the last hay in. She jumps off and gets caught with her wedding ring behind part of the cart.
Oh.
She lands on the floor. The finger stays
my legs.
upstairs. Yeah. And that, like, because that image gets burned so hard, you just hear a story, you never saw a picture, nothing like that. It's just so vivid in your mind to go like, okay, things can rip fingers off.
Yeah.
Do we need to make this episode explicit now?
I don't think it needs to be explicit. We should have a graphic content warning right before that story.
Yeah. So Adam, I don't know if anyone has told you this at your BJJ sessions so far, but you should take off any rings before you start.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I've had to take out my stretchers because that's very painful when someone's trying to strangle you and your ears folded up the wrong way and you have a big earring in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wore my necklace the first day and I didn't think anything of it, and we're wrestling around and stuff, and it was all good and well. And then my mate's trying to choke me, and I'm just like in agony because my chain's just like digging into me. And the trainer comes up and he's like, "You need to take your jewelry off. Like, you can't do that." I wear my ring, but oh wait, no, I don't. No, I was at first, but I took it off. So I have a story when I was in year 9. I don't know what that would be for you guys.
Grade. We'd call it grade 9.
Yeah, same thing.
Well, no, because we do grade 1 through 6, and then you go into high school, which is grade 7 through 12. So would 9 be middle school, maybe? I don't know. Or do you
9
do
is high school?
It'd be
It's
high school
similar.
for us.
It depends on where. Yeah.
So we were in shop class, and someone was using the bandsaw, didn't think anything of it, and someone just like screamed and stopped the bandsaw. And the dude working on the bandsaw was like, "What the hell are you doing?" Didn't even notice that he had cut his finger almost completely off. And until he saw the finger, he had no pain. And then he looked at the finger and just like lost it. He's like screaming his head off in agony. And I don't know, it always has stuck to me how he just didn't feel it.
Was he on drugs?
No.
Because like a lot of the kids in my high school were on drugs.
Well, I mean, I don't know the dude personally. Maybe he was, but I think he was just like in his element. You know, when you're just so distracted that you don't notice something until, like, how many people have you seen? Well, like on video and stuff that have like broken their ankle or something, and then they don't even know it until someone tells them, and they're like, "Oh crap, that hurts."
Yeah. So there's the shock, and then probably part of it as well was the vibration of the bandsaw desensitized his fingers to it in the moment.
Pretty crazy, but
let's
transition away from the graphic content.
let's get back into the youth and making. Beyond tiny tools, what are some other strategies everyone has to try and help youth get into making?
Well, I have one. Just quickly. What was always very empowering for me as a kid was when, like, my dad would give me a project to do that felt important. So he was like, when they got their house in Cape Cod, there was this old barn on the property, and in the loft of the barn, that was going to be like, if we had like extra kids over in the summer, they would sleep up there. So he's like, we need some really simple beds to put up there. So he was like, we have all these pallets. I want you to like modify these pallets so we can just put mattresses on them. So they're just raised slightly off the floor. And we were like, aye, Captain, like that's, it's like part of a cause. And so me and my friends spent like a whole day, like building all these beds. And it was like so fulfilling because then like we would sleep on them and it was like, you kind of like got the fruits of your labor that way. So I think if you can give your kids a project that feels like it matters, then you get the payoff, there's the payoff of making when like you see something in your head become reality, but then there's the other payoff where then it's useful and like you see other people use it as well. And that's the whole like other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really thought about this that much, but I remember like being a kid, like one of the things that got me into doing stuff with my hands was just pulling stuff apart. I would pull, like if a VCR was going to go, if Morley even knows what it is, was going to go out on the junk pile, I would go grab it and just get a screwdriver and pull it apart. And I've never really thought about it, but if we're going to throw away some stuff, I should just give it to my son and say, hey, here's a screwdriver. If you want, pull it apart. If you don't, just throw it in the bin. That's fine. But I think doing stuff like that, like just getting him used to using his hands and see if he's interested in it, it's probably going to help because honestly, like if a kid's not interested, they're not going to want to do it. My son doesn't ask me to come work in the shop, but if I said to him, hey, do you want to go in there? He will most likely come in. Whether he's interested or not, I haven't really gauge that yet. But the interest needs to be there as well.
Exactly.
Well, I think what
No, I was just going to say that what Morley was saying before about with like making something that you want is like that's my go-to for my kids. I mean, my daughter doesn't really ask for much. She's just 2. She just plays with things that are there. But what I didn't like when I was growing up is like I would ask something of my parents, like, "Oh, I want this thing," as a kid, and the answer would be, "Yeah, no." Either like no because it's too expensive, no you already have toys, no. And then sometimes me and my brother would get the idea of like, oh, well, maybe we can make it. Like we would never get guns. Like guns were like a big thing in our house, no guns. But we were like, can we have some nails and some boards and we're gonna make just a huge gun? And my dad would be like, yeah, no problem, go ahead. And so I do that with my son now. He comes up, he's like, oh my God, Daddy, the last thing he said to me was like, Daddy, I want to have a Bugatti Veyron. And I go, sure. Everyone wants a Bugatti Veyron. I'm like, but no, I'm like, I don't know where we're going to get one. I was like, I don't even know where we're going to get the toy version of that. And I said, let's make it. And so we made the, what's the best word for it? Crappiest Bugatti Veyron on the planet out of wood. And we put it on the base of another toy. But he was like into it. We were painting it, we were making it, we were designing it, we were building it for like a whole day. And at the end of the day, he had himself what to him looked like a Bugatti Veyron. And I was like, that's the one. Like, you want something, maybe you can just make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally.
Love that.
I think that's it. I remember like I've got a few toys that I made with my dad out of wood. And I remember like what he would do is he would give me the like wood magazine that had the project ideas in it, and he'd say, "Go through it and pick out a project for us to make." And we made That's two cool. things. We made a little train. We made a biplane. And I remember the third thing I asked for, he said no, and I never asked him again. I don't know. Like, was he busy? I can't remember what it was. It was just like. Maybe he wasn't excited about the project, which I can understand. It was a coat rack that looked like a baseball glove, and I wasn't into baseball. I just thought it looked kind of cool, and I just wanted it on my wall or whatever. He just basically said no, and I never asked to make another project. So,
damn.
Try. Like we've made other things past that, but I just remember like I never went to that wood magazine again. So if you're doing stuff with your kids, always try and don't say no.
That's crazy.
Like, go different.
Right.
That's crazy how much of an impression saying no to one thing can make on a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is going to sound a little strange. But, a big influence on me for wanting to make as a kid was actually books. Like I had a very active imagination, and I would read books like Hatchet and Little House on the Prairie and other Gary Paulson books, and even like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And it just made me like really want to like create things like they do in these worlds. Like I had this big sort of like infatuation as a kid with like frontier living, like in like the 1800s, like going out west and building a sod house and all these other things. And so I would just read those books and be like, well, now I want to go build a bow and arrow because the main character of Hatchet does it, and I want to try to do it like that. Like movies as well. Like obviously media is a big influence to kids, but I think books especially really made me want to make a lot of stuff as a kid.
For me, it was MacGyver. MacGyver was such an inspiration. Like every Sunday it was on, and 20 minutes after the show was over, me and my brother were making booby traps, and we were making like all sorts of stuff in the garden. That was the best.
I have never seen an episode of MacGyver.
Oh, you're not missing out on much, because if you look back at it as an adult, it's rough. It's rough to watch. The mullet
hasn't aged well.
Is intense. You can almost you can smell almost that hair. But what I loved about my childhood was like my dad. It's weird. Like he's not really a maker. He has a garden shed full of tools, and he sometimes makes small things, but he's just like he just collects a lot of tools, a lot of stuff because he likes to have it all on hand. He doesn't like to borrow things from people. Maybe he buys like a hedge trimmer and then uses to trim one hedge one time, and then that's it. Like he doesn't really make too many things, but there was always like a treasure trove of things in my house just to make things from. And so we would have Legos, which only would go so far because Legos are fun, but you have to take them down again, or it's just it's always the form factor of Legos. But then there was just always that garden shed of like, oh, well, what if we can build this? And then we would just start projects. Me and my brother, we would start things and just let the imagination go wild. And it was that I think was the coolest thing, because it didn't have much to do with our parents saying yes or no to things. It was just that door was always open if we were out playing, and my dad would just be, don't hurt yourself. And then we could basically use all the things in there.
Nice.
So moving on a little bit, I don't really have any more input about how to get kids in, but I have a bit of a dream. I think I've talked about it on here before, but I have this idea of starting a weekend class for kids for woodworking, but it would have to be like a full business, like open up a shop somewhere that has like 5 of each tool, and then kids can come in ranging on ages with a project that they build for like say an hour or whatever, with supervision of like teachers and all that sort of thing. Like trying to get kids into making, I suppose, that like don't have that father figure that's into that or at all sort of thing, if that makes sense. But so my son does this thing called Little Kickers, which is like soccer for little kids, and that's what gave me the idea of it. I just think it'd be great to like get kids to come in that all have like the same idea.
Have you listened to the Fools with Tools a lot?
Not really, no.
So Al from that podcast, he does this thing. Well, he's done it in the past where he takes like figures, and they make it so that you can build your own like little figure, kind of like you're building Legos, and you kind of put them together, and then he makes it so all the different stuff. And it's like these little maker challenges that any kid can come up and do easily. The other thing that he's done is he's done like this kind of zombie challenge thing where, you know, the people are going in and in the, like, it's really open, and you're just kind of like helping people get their idea. So I think a lot of times if you want to open it up to people, to just a general everyone can do it thing, it needs to be a very open idea, open concept. Because if it's more than one person, like you can't go, we're all going to build birdhouses, because maybe one kid wants to build a birdhouse and 6 of them don't.
Yeah.
There's a super cool project that here in the city, I live in Mechelen, the city's name, and that never happened due to COVID, but I hope it happens either this year or next year. It's like in the center of the city, there's a big cathedral. It's like, I don't know, let's say it's 100 meters high. It's quite big. And they never put a top on it. So the actual sort of spire or whatever you call that's on the top of the cathedral was never built, because after, I don't know, 300 years of building, the city was like, we're out of money. So the thing never was finished. So they now put like a little, you can walk up there and you can like look out, and there's like those binocular things. But some people came up with like, okay, let's get the people of the town involved in making the actual top of the tower in essentially what is like cardboard drenched in glue. I don't know what that's called exactly, but they were going to try and make this enormous thing. And the whole idea was, like paper mache, but it's a lot thicker. Like it's a very strong glue and it's very thick. It's like cardboard.
It's like micarta almost.
It's most that. It's like that. Correct. Okay. Yes, a cathedral top out of cardboard mache, and I had signed myself up with my son back in the early 2020 to do this because they were going to go over a period of 16 weeks and weekends. They were going to get groups of 20 people in, fathers, sons, mothers, daughters, everyone who wanted to, and they could all build parts of it. And I thought that was such a cool idea because then what they were going to do is build that tower up
totally.
somewhere, do a big party around it. I mean, of course, the top was never going to go on the cathedral, but the idea was like, as a city of makers, let's finish this cathedral. And well, we're going to get there at some point.
That's cool.
That's awesome. It's like a barn raising.
It is, yeah.
If you get everyone in the city involved, people will always be inspired by it. I think that's a really cool idea, and hopefully one day that can happen for you. Anyways, I think that was a really great conversation we had, and I think now I'm gonna thank our patrons. So I want to thank everyone who supports us over on Patreon. If you want to get more of us talking, if this wasn't enough for you, you're in luck. There's going to be a pre-show. There's going to be an after show, and you can hang out with us there. We actually do a monthly pre-show hangout where you actually get to be in the call and chat with us. And then after that, the other thing we do for our patrons is we have a keychain that every patron gets, or a luggage tag, whatever you want to use it for. And we have that's Morley's holding up some keychains for the viewers on YouTube.
So based on some feedback from Jeff, I actually switched up where the serial numbers are going. I put them on the front this time because they're not showing up too well on the back, but I think it looks really cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a good thing to mention right now.
Constant innovation over here at Clampcast.
Nice. Another nice thing to talk about constant innovation is that we now have a YouTube channel where we're actually doing a video podcast. I don't know, is it a vodcast? I don't know what it is.
A vodka.
Why not?
Wait, what does the P stand for in podcast then?
I think it comes from like iPod because that's where podcasts were originally. Because it was like a broadcast, but on an iPod. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
So it's now a video podcast. I don't know what it is, but you can go over to, if you search, like, it's hard because we're a small channel. If you go to YouTube and then search in Grant, Adam, Morley, Clamp, you'll find us, hopefully.
Yeah.
Get us to 1,000 subs so we can get that custom URL.
Yes.
100 subs.
Yeah. So we're going to go right into the Clampmendations.
Clampmendations.
Yes. I have someone. It's a YouTube channel of someone that I think I'm the only person who calls him that, but in my head I call him the Adam Savage of Belgium. The person is called Henk Rijkaard. He's a Belgian comedian and maker, and he's a big inspiration to me. And his YouTube channel is called De Coterij, which is a play on your werkkot, basically your workshop, and this thing in Belgium or here in Flanders that's called like coterij, which is essentially there's a house and then people add on to the house just as time goes on. So like there's a lot of row houses. Further on, there's like a smaller room and a smaller room and a smaller room. And so the town and all the areas we live in are littered with this coterij, so like small little houses after each other. And he will put a link down in the show notes for it, but he makes tons and tons of things. All of it's in Dutch, not unfortunately, but it's not as important, the things he says, but like he makes really cool things and he has a really cool style of coming up with projects and coming to fruition. So De Coterij, Henk Rijkaard.
And you're right. You're going to have to go into the show notes
Yeah.
to figure out how to
spell
write that unless you happen to speak Dutch. Because there's a lot of letter combinations that don't normally happen in English.
There's an I and a J that make a weird sound that it looks like Russian, but it isn't.
Yeah, and there's an A and an E together as well, which I don't often see. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, I went to
you for
type
that.
into the show notes as you were saying it. I was like, "There's no way I'm spelling that."
Morley, what are you going to recommend everyone else put in their clamps today?
So I wanted to give a shout out to Kevin Raposo. He just started, not just, but he's been working on it for a while, and he recently started this online photography and videography course. Adam, you actually might be interested in it with wanting to work on your photography skills. We actually interviewed him on Into the Spotlight last week. He did his master's of media production with Ryan. So that's how they know each other. And he's a small channel, a YouTube channel, but his videos are super good. I was watching a couple last night before we started recording, and I actually was a little late because I was really into his 8 tips for shooting better video, simple tips for shooting better video on your phone. He was a freelance. He still is a freelance photographer for 10 years. He's done sports photography, all sorts of other stuff. And yeah, he kind of has that Marquise Brownlee, is that his name? The tech reviewer. He has that sort of vibe and very polished. It's always cool seeing photographers make YouTube videos, because even when they first start their channel, it's it looks really, really good. So I'm wishing him all the success, and his YouTube channel could definitely get some more love. And he has a full course as well if you're interested in really doing a deep dive. He's a nice guy.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it looks good. It is. I agree with you that often these photographers make beautiful videos.
Yeah.
Or even these videographers, whatever they do, they make these beautiful videos. And then I look at mine and I go, why do I even try?
Well, it's such a rabbit hole, right?
I'm doing something completely different.
Yeah.
Right?
It's funny. We were talking about this as well last night. Photography and videography has become so widespread that so many people now use it as a tool. So it's really interesting to talk about the craft itself, because it's kind of a conversation that you don't have very often now, because it's something that we really take for granted. And it's even though everyone has a camera in their pocket, I still see some really terrible Instagram accounts, and just the mere fact that I can't figure out what the subject of your picture is. What am I supposed to be looking at here? There's a lot of there's a lot of basics in photography that people just don't really bother to learn. So it's interesting.
It's true. Yeah. Oh, good recommendation. For me, I'm going to tell everyone to go watch David Parker. He is a guy in New Zealand who likes, among other things, but he likes building canoes, or at least he's built a few of them. He's built some Bear Mountain boats, canoes. So they're Ontario. If you're into Nick Offerman, you would have known he filmed their how-to video with Jimmy DiResta. They did that a long time ago. You can get a VHS copy of that if you're interested, or they have a DVD as well. But it's how to build their boats. It's really kind of cool. But in his latest building a boat, he obviously goes through it, but he shows you how to do it without stapling. So Bear Mountain boats suggest you do staples, and staples just hold it in place until the glue dries. So he did it a different way, where you basically use C-clamps and wedges. So it's kind of cool. And he also built a paper boat, which is it's fiberglass, and it's fiberglass cloth and paper, but it looks kind of cool because he built it from the book How to Build a Canoe. And then the author of the book actually commented on the video.
That was a project I always wanted to do as a kid, is make my own canoe. And yeah, never got, I'll do it at some point in my life, but I didn't get around to it before I left for university.
I could not imagine the stress of building a canoe.
Well, I think the interesting thing about canoes is you can make them incredibly simple. A canoe can just be a wooden frame with a tarp around it,
right.
or a dugout canoe, right? You can just get a log and start burning it out.
So in our Frosh week, which is like our first week of school when I was in engineering, they have a boat building competition where we then go in the Rideau Canal and we have to use the boat that we built. And the only thing we're given is 3 rolls of duct tape, and everything else has to be found material.
Yeah, right.
We built a piece of garbage with some melamine, basically. But the winners of that year took sheet metal and built a canoe. And they kicked butt. And all it was some like sheet metal folded over and duct taped at the front and back. And that obviously duct tape's not going to hold forever. But they built a canoe overnight, and it was fast. It like twice as fast as the next like raft, which is what everyone else built.
Yeah.
This is giving me some product ideas, because I got a pop riveter a while ago for like one project that I haven't touched since, and I'm thinking about Jacko's airplane wing desk in that sort of look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rivets are cool.
They
I
are.
like rivet. That's why I named my dog Rivet. Adam, what are you clampmendating?
So I'm clampmendating something different. So it is called a pull-up power tower. And essentially it's like a power strip that is like inset into a surface. You push a little button and then you can pull it up and essentially have a power strip. But it's hidden when you don't need it. Now, I saw this in a video and thought it was such a good idea, and I have a great idea for what I'm going to do with it, but I don't want to say what that is yet. But I think it'd be really cool to integrate into like the top of a workbench.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have power at all times. I'm going to be putting one in my workbench, but it's going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be in the top.
It's an interesting alternative to what I think is the kind of go-to solution for that is having those coils hanging from the ceiling of extension cords that people pull down. That's cool. Yeah. It's like a Iron Man workshop style. Very classy.
So the one that's going to be linked in the show notes is like $100, but I found one on eBay for like 30. So
cool.
Yeah, I've seen them on Amazon as well.
yeah, I always wanted to have like, you know how you get like a hose reel on like a retractable thing.
Yeah.
I always wanted one of those, like an extension cord, but they're like over $100, and I just can't justify paying that much for an extension cord.
I have one. It's awesome. Totally worth it.
Yeah,
There you
I
go.
bet it would be. But the thing is, with my workbench, if I put one of these in, I think I'll have power everywhere I need it anyway.
Yeah. Until you have to, like, I use mine for doing like my anything out in the driveway. So it's great for that. Like, I need to charge my car battery. I pull that extension cord.
The only tool I have that requires power is a miter saw, a circular saw.
Yeah. Anyways, great recommendation. I definitely want to put one of those in my workbench.
Yeah.
Better than what I currently have. Or in a desk would be great. So at this point, we would normally go into people reviewing our clamps, but we don't have any reviews. So instead, we're going to give a tool tip. So anyone got a tool tip or a hack or a thing? I know we forgot to go over this earlier, but I think we can just put Yves on the spot and he can do it.
Thanks for that one. Tooltip. Well, I don't really have any specific tips of like any what's the word for it? Like I don't have any like groundbreaking ideas, but I only recently discovered the concept of like sharpening things with what do you call it? Those stones that you make wet stones. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's as easy as that. Because I had a hand plane for the longest time, and it's like Grant was talking about those baby hand planes in kids' tools that don't get sharp. And I had a hand plane, and I used it for 5 minutes, and I was like, "This is a piece of." And then I realized, but wait a minute, they come from the store. They're never that sharp. I've heard people talk about this, so I bought a very cheap stone, 2 grits on each side, and I started sharpening them. And you're going through the laborious task of sharpening a. What do you call it? You're sharpening a chisel and you're like, this is never going to work. This is never going to work. And then I run it over my workpiece and in like 10 seconds, it was flat. And I remember I stopped and I stared at all the shavings. And for like a millisecond, I was like, this is a superpower. And that's just it. I think you guys mentioned before, like sharp tools. Oh my God, everything just changes overnight or like it just changes the whole game. You get reinvigorated, and I'm like, and now I want to new saw blades on everything, and I want to sharpen the world.
I remember the first time I sharpened my planer and stuff, and I was just like, wow, like beforehand it was just so crap. And you watch people like Wood by Right who uses only hand tools, and like all I think is like I could not imagine how hard it must be on the body to like do all that work. But then you sharpen your planer and you're like, wow, like this is amazing. Like it's
like
not
a hot
as
knife
much
through butter.
Yeah, like it's not as hard work. I mean, it's hard work, but I mean, it's not as hard as what it needs as what you think it's going to be. And if you have a very sharp planer, like you can get a pretty much perfect surface.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
good tip. Sharp tools.
and one more thing, like I have it. It's just because I have it here. Like I have rolls of these. What is it? It's gaffer tape, right? I have gaffer tape in all different colors and sizes, and they're all, in almost every bag or every place I am. There is some gaffer tape. I use this so much because it sticks very well. You can just easily like rip it with two hands. You can use it to mark things, the whole things. It's the best tape on planet Earth, and yeah, that's my tool tip: gaffer tape.
Well, there you go. Well, first I want to say thank you to TF Turning for our theme song. And then I want to say thank you to Yves for coming by. Where can everyone find you, Yves?
You're very welcome, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure. You can find me on my YouTube channel mostly. It's called Projects and Things, where I make projects and things.
All right. Well, you can find us all on Clampcast or Clamp everywhere. Sometimes it's Clampcast, sometimes it's Clamp. But we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us this week. It was a great conversation.
Thank you. Thanks, Yves.
You're very welcome.
All right.
Bye.
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 Something I never really saw much before coming to Canada is tuck tape. And that was sort of like a running joke at the lodge I worked at, because like we had this like variety of tapes, and our conclusion was that tuck tape is like the best all around tape. And it's very similar to masking tape, or no, sorry, packing tape, but it's red, and it's mostly used for like taping seams and like exterior paneling and houses and things. But
that is not where my mind went.
So that was the joke as well. That was the other joke on the maintenance
Same
team.
here.